Cool. I think we are ready to go. Welcome everyone to the latest episode of Upwards. Thank you for joining us. This is my guest today, Justin. And Justin is the CEO and founder of Authsignal. Today we're going to talk a little bit about online identity. We're going to talk about passwords, passwordless, some of the future technologies around identity management online. But really cool to have my friend Justin on the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Phil.
Really nice to have you here. And look, Justin is running a business I see called Authsignal. What they are doing is helping secure identities online. So everything surrounding that. Justin was formerly CTO of Lay-By as well. That's where we kind of met originally. He's running his own business these days and it's doing some pretty cool things in the security and identity space. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And first of all, if you don't know me, my name is Phil. I am founder and CEO of Onwardly, and we're a security company, security operations company, really helping turn everyday folks into security superheroes through a comprehensive platform that helps you build, manage, and scale security and privacy programs of work. So if you need some help in that area and you're a startup or an MSP or a security consultant, or a developer in that space, please check us out. We'd love to have a chat with you about how we might be able to help your business. This is Upwards. It's a weekly podcast. This is season 2. You can check out the entirety of season 1 on LinkedIn and YouTube and wherever you find your podcasts as well. This is Upwards. We're a podcast talking about security, technology, leadership, and startups in general. So we feature guests that cross over into any of those fields. And we want to learn some interesting things, and we want to hopefully deliver some value to you as a listener as well. So please check us out, like and subscribe, and leave a comment for us as well. We'd love to hear from you. And if you've got any questions for myself or Justin, please just drop a comment in the box, and we'll do our best to get back to you. So with that out of the way, welcome again.
Thank you.
Great to have you on the show.
Great. Well, thanks for having me, Phil.
You're welcome.
Well, I think, you got to start somewhere, right? So should I start with a little bit of that story?
Yeah, tell us a little bit about you. How did you get to this point of starting something like Authsignal? What's your background and what are you guys doing now?
Cool. So I started and probably typecasted myself, which tends to be the case as a fintech engineer. So I went through multiple rounds of different fintech iterations, from peer-to-peer lending to the buy now, pay later revolution through Afterpay, previously Lay-By, and found myself in that very consumer-centric, high-value fintech world, which has been really exciting for me. Mm-hmm. What I found from that experience was, there's been a rapid move from like paper-based, physical-based interactions in the fintech or financial services industry to a completely digital kind of platform, right? And I mean, when was the last time you walked into a bank? I can't remember, right? So everything, especially with COVID, has gone digital, and you're dealing with people's money. So what I found throughout that whole process was, it's been a paradigm shift in how us as individuals interact with trust and confidence with these institutions that provide us with these financial services. And the long story short, it's difficult. It's not easy to deliver financial services while trying to balance the customer experience and also provide that level of security that you'd expect from a bank. And it's been a very tough, balance to do that, and that's why Authsignal exists, is because we want to actually make it super easy for more digital businesses to deliver high value services. Can be financial, could be whatever, but we want to make it super simple.
Yeah, indeed. And look, protecting your identity, it's no strange to anyone. Protecting your identity online is one of the critical, foundational aspects of running any security program and security in general. We're used to 2FA codes by now, but not everyone has them turned on, right? And so when we think about running a security program, we think about turning it on for as many services as possible. And that's not always, it's sometimes harder to do than it sounds. So you've got to coordinate a lot of people and things like that. Why is 2FA so important?
Look, authentication factors provide a layer of security and as a gate to any kind of private information that you want to keep secure. I think that's the fundamental principles of authentication. Why 2FA is important in this world is because every single login box that you see as a username and password is vulnerable to a lot of types of attack vectors.
Sure.
One, we reuse passwords, and I think we can all put our hands up that at some point in our lives we have picked either our birthday or a favorite pet's name and reused that. And it compounds itself when one website gets breached, they now know that password and they go somewhere else to then try it.
Yeah.
And it's compounding. So that one factor, which is what you know, your passphrase or your password, is now not sufficient, right? So adding a second factor to that first factor means that if I was an attacker, I now need to know what you know, your password, or maybe something that I found on the dark web, and a secondary factor before I can get into your private data or access your account. So in a nutshell, it's about securing your accounts, and the second factor does that because it adds that extra layer for an attacker to try and crack.
Yeah, and look, even if you do have great passwords and you've got strong, unique passwords, the simple fact is they get breached and they get leaked online. And so you almost need to act in a way that, assuming somebody may have access to your password, because inevitably they may do, right? We've seen some pretty high profile events happen in the last couple of years or
even weeks.
Even weeks, right? It's very topical. Not a lot of time needs to go by before we see this happen in the wild again. And so that's why it's such a critical layer. You deal a lot with B2C type applications, but it's also equally important in B2B. Can you talk about sort of maybe some of the differences between those or even the similarities?
Right. Okay. So in B2B style SaaS products, you tend to have a smaller group of end users, administrators, and depending on the scale, they tend to be small in scale. So, an organization like a bank could have maybe tens and thousands of administrative staff, which is sizable. But when it comes to consumer population sizes, you're talking hundreds and thousands of users that use services to the millions if you go to America. So I think the biggest the difference is scale.
The scale, yeah.
In a B2B SaaS product, you're dealing with smaller populations that you can kind of throw policies at. Everyone needs to now enroll to two-factor, and if you don't do that, well, then you can't work here, right? So you can be quite heavy-handed with the style of policies that you put on a B2B or internal population size. In B2C, it's a little bit more complex. You've got accessibility issues, you've got equity issues. Some people don't have a cell phone, and if they don't have a cell phone, and you don't give them any alternatives to SMS, then they're really at a disadvantage. And in B2C, you want your experiences to be as seamless as possible and not have too many roadblocks, and appropriately challenge customers when there is a heightened risk. Now that becomes very complicated when you think about the engineering required, the kind of rollouts that are involved when you're rolling out 2FA to consumers. It's a lot different from rolling out to, say, an internal employee population. So that's why we exist as Authsignal. It's in my past life building financial tech products for B2C customers. It's not a blanket turn on the switch and the next day everyone's semi-locked out of their accounts and can't get in, because what that happens, it flows on to the customer support teams, and then you just get a nightmare of issues to deal with. So it's complex. B2C is complex.
Complexity and the volume and the scale and the experience requirements is so much higher that you've just got more and more at stake there. One of the things I've been thinking about and talking to a few people about as well, just on the subject of 2FA, is that, it's one thing to enable it for your business applications, but you actually need to do it in your personal life as well. If you're a business user, this might seem obvious to some people, but that's a bit of a light bulb moment for others, is that you actually need to enable it on your own personal. You need to protect your personal identity in order to protect your business identity, because people use personal accounts all the time as escalation points to then get into a business.
Yeah.
And so please, if you've got personal email addresses in any way, shape, or form, which everyone does, really, really critical that you consider 2FA for that and turn that on and protect that. And your friends and family, just encourage them to do it. It might be a slight amount of friction when they have to log into email again. But if that's not protected, then people can use that to impersonate other people. So really critical you do it. Personal life and business life.
They're interlinked, and if I can become Phil Howie for the day and then convince the bank to remove some controls or wire me some money, I'm going to invest in that, and I'm going to see how I can get into your account. So it's there's an incentive for these bad actors to have a crack. Yeah.
Sure. So yeah, I implore you, please do it. Please look into your own world and make those configuration changes. Talking a little bit about passwords and authentication in general, passwords are obviously have been around a long time. There are some really cool, interesting, newer ways emerging of doing identity and authentication. Can you talk a little bit about some of the technologies that are starting to kind of become viable now that people may not know much about or may not have even heard of?
Yeah, it's 2023, and I'm glad that we have alternatives to username and passwords in this world. It took so long to get there, but I think one of the things that that now we can talk about this in more common terms is because everyone's got one of these things.
Yeah.
A hardware device, or in more layman's terms, a phone. Everyone's got a phone in your hands, and this is your key to many things now. And all these phones these days are now equipped with biometric functionality, like fingerprint readers or Face ID, which in the world of authentication, we call these factors very, very difficult to copy. To replicate someone's biometric features, either through your face or thumbprint. For a long time, we know that these features are unique to you, and no one else can just copy unless they maybe chop off your thumb. We won't get there. We won't get into that scenario. So because of the proliferation of these devices and these tools, now websites can actually I can actually start looking at ditching or providing alternative authentication mechanisms. And the technical word for these devices is FIDO2 authenticators, and all of our latest and greatest computers and phones have fingerprint readers that are compatible. Most of the browsers are compatible. And the reason why these are so hot for the next couple of years, and Apple and Google are getting all over it, is because it's not phishable. You need someone's face to be present on the device for the transaction to happen. In other authentication mechanisms like SMS, OTP, I could be an intermediary and go, hey, Phil, tell me your 6-digit PIN. And I could jump on a website and key that in on behalf, and that's phishing.
And we've seen some sophisticated phishing attempts where people actually get people to type in their 2FA code, as part of the whole routine, right? So they're not completely infallible.
I won't name a telco, but my wife got rung up recently to get a plan sold to her, to move from a prepaid to a monthly plan. And strangely, as part of the authentication process, the person on the other side of the phone sent her 6-digit code from this telco to authenticate and authorize the upgrade of the plan. And I was next to her, and I kind of went, hold up, like, who's the person on the other end? Like, how do I? So I got on the phone and back and forth, and after a few rounds of kind of establishing trust, there was a degree of assurance that that person was indeed from that telco. But it's things like that where even legitimate users of it is preconditioning users to accept that people are going to ring you up and then ask you for a 6-digit code. So it's interesting how I think businesses have a part to play in the education and a normalization of certain behaviors. And when it comes to these new technologies, I can't force you to authorize something unless I drag you to your phone and put your face in front of it. That's difficult to fish.
Right.
So yeah, look, the keywords that if you want to look it up on Google, FIDO2, Web Auth N, and proliferated by the big tech companies, passkeys. So we support that at Authsignal out of our suite of authenticator types. So maybe if you've got a flow that you just want a Face ID to just happen, you can put us in. And you know what? It's actually quite frictionless.
So this can work in like mobile apps. It can work in websites as well.
Yep.
Which is kind of cool because websites have always sort of been a little bit disconnected to the operating system in some ways. And so being able to kind of do that with that tighter integration is kind of cool. Yeah.
And for B2B guys, the geeks out there, you've got these little doohickeys here. They're called YubiKeys. They're another form of FIDO2 authenticator. That's
so you have to have it on your person
to
obviously to prove that you are who you are.
Yeah.
So also don't leave your keys around. Just protect those at all times because you want to keep that safe.
Well, back to the key ring and keeping that safe. How funny.
Yeah. Oh, that's very cool. And look, so how far away are we from really adopting these technologies mainstream, Justin? Like, is this still kind of a proof of concept, or is this being used right now, like in the wild?
You're starting to see just in the last 6 months more mainstream adoption. So companies like eBay are starting to lead that into their customer journeys. In my opinion, it's still in the early adopter phase where companies want to proliferate it. So they're putting it in as like early access for the geeks out there. So I think the big tech are very responsible for how mainstream this gets. I know Apple has done a good job so far, but I think Google has a few steps to just make the process a little bit more seamless, especially on the phone. So we're involved in their little focus groups and user groups. So we see the conversations and debates that people are having. People are trying to rationalize this technology still, but I'm pretty confident in the next 12 months, the next time you go to your, hopefully New Zealand banks, if they use Authsignal, take us on, you could unlock your internet banking with your face, right. And do transactions that way. And let's push for it. Let's demand that out of our the services that we use. So be picky. If you're not satisfied with the security, send them an email, tell them what you think.
Even internally in some businesses, they might roll out something like YubiKeys or hardware, different forms of authentication for their own staff internally, right? Yep. So even if you can't give it to your customers yet, you may be able to implement it internally as an extra source of just protection, right? So
B2B, if you run a tech business with hundreds of employees, do consider switching these hardware FIDO2 bound security factors. They will save you business. Those that are still relying on username and passwords for your different portals, either switch it on if it's already available, or use something like Authsignal and really just chuck us in and get the security, because that's how attackers are now really attacking supply chains. They're going into weak businesses and then hopping through, different vendors to get to what they want. And the first point of entry is authentication.
Yeah, very cool. Where do we find you online, Justin, if we want to check out more?
Well, we've got an 0800 number that you can ring. No, I'm just kidding.
0800
Authsignal. Don't
really?
do that.
No, you're going to say 0800 bat signal. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. Oh, actually, no, you've given me an idea. Authsignal.com. We've got developer documentation that is easy to pick up and explore. We've got a generous free trial. So if you've got under 1,000 users in your SaaS product and just need to comply with either regulations or a pen tester has just picked out something in your platform, takes an hour to put us in, and then you can turn around and say, hey, look, we've got secure authentication mechanism. You can use us as a multi-factor step, or you could completely go passwordless, and we've got some guides as well for that.
Right, so you can do the whole identity piece for a web app or something like that.
We drop in. So if most people start with a users table.
Right. So they do their own username and password.
Yeah, you may have an identity platform like Auth0. We work with Auth0.
Okay, so you can plug into that.
We can plug into that, and we've plugged into the Microsoft stack as well. So very flexible.
That's cool. Well, cool to hear about your journey. And there's not that many security startups really in the Kiwi space.
We're a rare breed.
So it's nice to just to see other people do some great work there as well. And more power to you guys. It's awesome to see. Yeah,
and back to you as well. Big fan of Onwardly, and also just sitting on the sidelines cheering on.
Yeah, very cool. Well, look, short and sweet today. That's all we've got time for. Let's ask Justin or myself any questions that you have around this. Happy to follow up and give you some more information, or just answer any questions in general. Again, you'll find episodes of Upwards both here on LinkedIn. You'll find them on YouTube and wherever you download your podcasts as well. So please check us out. We've got a whole back catalogue of episodes with some great people sharing some really cool insights into their world of security, startups, and everything in between. So appreciate your time, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.